when you are a silver stacker, a precious metal stacker, sometimes you're confronted with something that is a little bit outside of the ordinary, and you have to kind of do a quick evaluation to decide if this is the type of thing that you want in your physical precious metal holdings. This is the kind of mental gymnastics that I've been confronted with for at least the last 20 or 30 years. And I wanted to bounce this off of you and see what you think about this. So if you were confronted with this and asked if this is the type of thing you want added to your stack, the questions you might ask, well, what is it? And we can tell you with a fair degree of certainty that this is an English crown. That is the largest circulating silver coin from this period of time. And we know that this is an English crown because that is Queen Victoria on it. This is technically the second portrait that was used of her as she was becoming a more mature woman. And we know that because we can see the designer's initials down here at the very bottom, just on the edge of her robe here. And that is Leonard Charles Wyan. Those are his initials down there. He was the designer of this. So we know what it is, and we know who designed it, at least the front of it. Do we know what it's made from? Well, we do, because this is a crown sterling, technically where we get the word sterling from. So we know that this is, everyone, 92.5% pure. Or if we're talking about that molestimable expression that we've talked about a lot recently, this would be 0.925 pure. So we know what it is. We know what it's made of. We know who designed it. Do we know when it was made? The answer to that question is yes. We have the date down below here. As you can see below this portrait of St. George slaying the dragon, we have a date of 1890. And we even know who designed this. You can see his initials down here, down below. That the initials B and P stand for Benedetto Pistrucci. This is a famous portrait of George slaying the dragon. This is, for you gold stackers out there, obviously, the reverse of the back of the English sovereign that was used for 150 years. So we know when it was made. We know what it's made of. We know what it is. We know who designed it. Do we know where it was made? This was struck in London, so we have a pretty good idea of exactly what this is. With all of that information that is readily available, pieces of information that you can glean from looking at this piece, would you feel comfortable adding this to your precious metal stack? If the answer to that question is yes, then do you also stack these items? And that's what this video series is about. This video series entitled, Is It Silver? And this is a question that is asked all the time online, and that's why I decided to create this video series to kind of help you as you are navigating the world, trying to find those items that are not silver, and more importantly, trying to avoid those items that look like silver, that sound like silver, that feel like silver, that even smell like silver, but that are not silver, the items to avoid. If you are new to the channel, my name is White Cross. You can call me Dub C, you can call me White. I answer to pretty much anything, and I really appreciate you being with me here today. If you are one of my returning subscribers, what can I say? But thank you guys, as always, for being with me here again. This promises to be a very interesting journey, a very interesting series. And if you are new to the channel, I'd like to encourage you to subscribe to the channel, also become part of this community if you like this type of content. This video series entitled, Is It Silver? Will approach a lot of different sectors, and I'm going to leave this video series a little bit open-ended. I have 4 or 5 videos that I'm planning to make. This is the introductory video to this series, but we will be covering a lot of interesting factors, a lot of other interesting areas in this kind of larger silver market. Some of those are, what isn't silver? That will be the next silver video. Is it silver? The answer is no. So we'll go over some of the most commonly encountered items that look, feel, smell, taste like silver, but just aren't silver. And the goal for that is to try to at least eliminate some of those items from your focus, so you know what to look for that you don't want. That way you can exclude those pieces and focus a little bit more on those pieces that have a greater chance of actually being made out of silver. And from there, we'll take a look at other things, and I'll go over some of those items towards the end of this video, some of the other topics that we'll cover. If you are new to the channel, I like to begin my videos with a simple disclaimer, and that is, I am not a financial advisor. I'm not trying to offer any kind of financial advice. I'm simply trying to share some of my experience having bought and sold precious metals and rare coins for the last 30 or 40 years. And I also like to start off my videos with a couple of concepts, some key terms that we can work back into the subject matter of the video. In this case, I've got a handful of them I'm going to throw at you, but you're probably familiar with a lot of them. Let's just try to redefine some because they will come into play not only with this video, but with other videos in this series as those videos are released. The first definition I wanted to get out here is silver plate. So silver plate is not just a flat piece of metal that you eat off of. What I'm talking about here is an item that has been plated with a very, very thin coating of silver. And that silver can be applied with several different mechanisms, different techniques. They include heating up the item. They include chemical bonding. They include electric bonding. There are lots of different ways that we can do this. Why would somebody have plated something with silver? For thousands of years, vessels, drinking vessels, and eating utensils have been made out of silver for its antibiotic properties, its value, its beauty, its cleanliness. There are a whole host of reasons why things have been made out of silver, but as we kind of approach the modern era, say from about 1400 forward, these items really became a status symbol. Common people would have eaten off of bowls and cups and mugs made from clay or carved from wood, but you really had to have some serious money to have a drinking vessel like this one made out of solid silver, and that is because coinage at the time was made from silver as well. So if you could afford to tie up your money in the form of a mug that you would use once a day or once a week, it showed that you really had a lot of reserved wealth. It was a way of displaying your wealth. But when silver plate finally came around, it became something that everybody could afford. Most of the time, silver-plated items are made of a base metal, that is copper or nickel or tin or some amalgamation of those other metals. And a very thin layer of silver is bonded to it, and you can make very beautiful pieces that most people would probably not be able to tell the difference on if it was made of a base metal or if it was made of solid silver. And that is the tragedy of silver-plated items that is still with us to this day. Because even though we don't really use these pieces very much anymore, we would love to add these pieces to a silver stack if we can get them cheaply enough. At least I know that I would. So the question is, how do we determine what is silver-plated and what is solid silver? That's a key component of what we're going to talk about. That's why I wanted to throw that definition out here. A thin layer of silver bonded to a lower valued metal like copper or nickel. Silver plate. The next subject is a little bit more nuanced, and that is the concept of flatware. In America, at least where I'm from, and I'm guilty of doing this myself, I tend to use the term silverware when I'm talking about knives and forks and spoons, but that's not really the case. The only silverware are pieces that are actually made of silver. Everything else is flatware. So steel, stainless steel, nickel, silver-plated items, that's not really silverware, but I use the term generically, almost like we would use the term Band-Aid. It represents everything that we eat with, those eating utensils, the knives, the forks, the spoons, and even the serving ladles and things like that. Technically, it has to be made out of silver to be silverware. If it's not made out of silver, but it is still in the shape of a fork, a knife, or a spoon, it is flatware. So all silverware is flatware, but not all flatware is silverware. It's a little bit more nuanced, but I'm going to try, and you can catch me later in the series if you catch me using the term silverware more generically, when what I really mean is flatware, or vice versa. So silverware versus flatware. And finally, the last term I want to talk about is hollowware. So hollowware is more of a vessel-shaped item. It's a tableware that holds something or is used to serve something. This is our mug that we looked at earlier. This would be an example of hollowware. And we'll also talk a little bit about objects of virtue. These are topics that I've talked about a little bit in the past. Object of virtue is something that is made of precious metals, but is not jewelry and is not bullion and is not really silverware or tableware, hollowware, if you will. It's more items that bring joy to look at, so small statues, that kind of thing. That would be considered an object of virtue. So we'll talk about all of these things: silver plate, flatware, silverware, hollowware. objects of virtue as we go deeper into this. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the other topics that we will discuss in this series. And again, I'm going to leave this video series open-ended. So if there are other topics that you'd like to see me touch on that deal with these same items, by all means, leave a suggestion down below, and we'll get to that towards the end of this video as well. I have here in front of you 2 selections. So you have a piece of a serving vessel. This would be hollowware. That would be the plates that you see here below. You have an assortment of spoons as well, dinnerware, flatware, silverware. And then we also have some jewelry. As you see here, there is a cuff, there's a cuff, a couple of rings. Each of these have turquoise, that is Native American silverware or silver jewelry, and we'll talk about that a little bit later as well. And then each one of these selections has a larger bowl on it as well. So I want to see a show of hands, and in the past I've had you scream at the top of your lungs, and by all means, if this is something you want to do, on a count of 3, which one of these sets is solid silver, and which one of these sets is silver plated? Because one of these 2 groups has almost no silver in it, and one of these groups is made entirely of at least 92.5% pure silver. So on the count of 3, we're going to count down. I want you to scream, is it left or right? That's the solid silver. 3, 2, 1. I heard a lot of answers from everybody, and that's great. Tell you what, leave your response down below, because in the next video in this series, I will tell you, and we'll go over this piece by piece and discuss exactly what you need to know if you're trying to pick out those pieces that are silver, or like I said, those pieces that are not silver, that will waste your time and tie up your resources. That's the key to this, is trying to get rid of those pieces that don't have silver so you can focus on those pieces that potentially do have silver. So that will be the next video. And other videos in this series will be English or UK silver. So we'll talk about hallmarks, and I know hallmarks can be a little bit intimidating when you first encounter them. They can be a tricky and very nuanced subject in and of themselves. Here's our mug that we were looking at earlier, and you can see the hallmarks down below. These hallmarks, if you can read them, tell you every bit as much information as we saw when we were looking at this English crown. It tells you the city it was made in, it tells you the purity of the silver, it tells you the year in which it was made, and it even tells you who made it, who designed it. All of that information is accessible if you know how to decipher these hieroglyphics that we call English hallmarks. England's not the only country that uses hallmarks. In fact, many countries, especially in Europe, use hallmarks. That's the area we're going to focus on, though. Those are the pieces that you are most likely to encounter if you're out looking for these types of items. So that will be another episode. I'm going to talk about American silver and American objects of virtue. We're going to go over some of the things to look for, some of the things that are unique about American jewelry or American silver that was made from the early 1800s up until today. So we're going to go over some of those items, things to look for, things to avoid. And then another episode of this series, we will talk about silver jewelry. And if you are looking at these images of the jewelry that we have here before you, you know, you may have actually heard from some of the earlier videos that I have done that I'm a big fan of Native American, First Nations, American Indian jewelry. This is something that's been part of my family going back the better part of half of a century. And it's also something that I look for periodically myself. This is a collection that I have. But I also dabble a little bit in modern American jewelry and also Mexican jewelry of the mid-20th century, from 1920 till about 1960. So I will tell you pieces to look for, pieces to avoid, what to look for as we go deeper into silver jewelry as well. All of these things are a valid thing to put into a silver stack. In fact, in the world of precious metals, some of these things can be the best bargain that you will ever find. And we'll talk about the pluses and the minuses. We'll talk about the pitfalls and the advantages of looking for pieces like this. So this promises to be a very interesting series, at least I think it is, and I hope you will stick with me on this journey as we issue more and more videos in this series over time. Again, if you have questions about anything that I've talked about so far, leave a comment down below. I'd be happy to try to address it if I can. If you would please indicate which one of these two, the left or the right, that you feel is the solid silver versus the silver plated items. And we'll go into that a little bit better detail in the next video that occurs in this series. If there are other series titles that you'd like me to approach, if there are other topics in the area of is it silver, things that are not common bullion, things that are not common silver coins, but everything else that is kind of out there in the periphery that still makes a very good possibility to add to a silver stack, leave a comment down below, and I'd be happy to see if I've got the knowledge base and the examples that we can talk about that subject as well. As you know, if you are returning to the channel, if you've got a question, there's a very good chance that somebody else has a question also. I'd like to be able to knock that out of the park for everybody so we can answer that question and add a little bit more to the discourse as we're looking at these unusual items that you can add to a silver stack. And as always, thank you for allowing me to be a part of your journey as you go deeper into the world of coins and physical precious metals.